Hi there, good evening and thanks for joining us here on a brand new edition of WION Fineprint. I'm Molly Compete. First is some breaking developments coming in right at the top of this edition. Boris Johnson has resigned as the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, thereby becoming a third minister in a span of 24 hours to walk out of the government. Now, this also comes against Theresa May's plans for a soft Brexit. The Prime Minister hammered out a compromise with her deeply divided cabinet in an all-day meeting on Friday. But after consulting friends and allies since, Johnson decided that he could not promote the deal and has now stepped down. Prime Minister May has accepted the resignation of Boris Johnson as Foreign Secretary. Let's take a listen in to Theresa May addressing the Parliament.
March next year. It is a proposal that will take back control of our borders, our money and our laws. But do so in a way that protects jobs, allows us to strike new trade deals through an independent trade policy, and keeps our people safe and our union together. Before I set out the details of this proposal, I want to start by explaining why we are putting it forward. The negotiations so far have settled virtually all of the withdrawal agreement, and we've agreed an implementation period which will provide businesses and governments the time to prepare for our future relationship with the EU. But on the nature of that future relationship, the two models that are on offer from the EU are simply not acceptable. First, there is what is provided for in the European Council's guidelines from March this year. This amounts to a standard free trade agreement for Great Britain, with Northern Ireland carved off in the EU's customs union and parts of the single market, separated through a border in the Irish Sea from the UK's own internal market. No Prime Minister of our United Kingdom could ever accept this. It would be a profound betrayal of our precious union. And while I know some might propose instead a free trade agreement for the UK as a whole, this is not on the table because it would not allow us to meet our commitments under the Belfast Agreement that there should be no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. Secondly, there is what some people say is on offer from the EU, a model that is effectively membership of the European Economic Area, but going further in some places and remaining in the customs union for the whole of the UK. This would mean continued free movement, continued payment of vast sums every year to the EU for market access, a continued obligation to follow the vast bulk of EU law, no independent trade policy, with no ability to strike our own trade deals around the world. I firmly believe this would not honour the referendum result. So if the EU continues on this course, there is a serious risk it could lead to no deal. And this would most likely be a disorderly no deal, for without an agreement on our future relationship, I cannot see that this Parliament would approve the withdrawal agreement with the Northern Ireland Protocol and financial commitments, and without these commitments the EU wouldn't sign a withdrawal agreement. Mr. Speaker, a responsible government must prepare for a range of potential outcomes, including the possibility of no deal. Including the possibility of no deal. And given the short period remaining before the conclusion of negotiations, the Cabinet agreed on Friday that these preparations should be stepped up. But at the same time, we should recognise that such a disorderly no deal would have profound consequences for both the UK and the EU, and I believe that the UK deserves better. So the Cabinet agreed that we need to present the EU with a new model, evolving the position that I had set out in my Mansion House speech so that we can accelerate negotiations over the summer, secure that new relationship in the autumn, pass the withdrawal and implementation bill and leave the European Union on the 29th of March 2019. Mr. Speaker, the friction-free movement of goods is the only way to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And it is the only way to protect the uniquely integrated supply chains and just-in-time processes on which millions of jobs and livelihoods depend. So at the heart of our proposal is a UK-EU free trade area which will avoid the need for customs and regulatory checks at the border and protect those supply chains. To achieve this requires 4 steps. First, a commitment to maintaining a common rulebook for industrial goods and agricultural products. To deliver this, the UK would make an upfront, sovereign choice to commit to ongoing harmonisation with EU rules on goods, covering only those necessary to provide for frictionless trade at the border. This would not cover services, because this is not necessary to ensure free flow at the border, and it would not include the common agricultural and fisheries policies, which the UK will leave when we leave the EU. The regulations that are covered are relatively stable and are supported by a large share of our manufacturing businesses. And we would continue to play a strong role in shaping the European and international standards that underpin them. And there would be a parliamentary lock on all new rules and regulations, because when we leave the EU, we will end the direct effect of EU law in the UK. All laws in the UK will be passed in Westminster, Edinburgh, Cardiff and Belfast. Our Parliament would have the sovereign ability to reject any proposals if it so chose, recognising that there will be consequences, including for market access, if we chose a different approach from the EU. Second, we'll ensure a fair trading environment. So under our proposal, the UK and the EU would incorporate strong reciprocal commitments relating to state aid.